tie-in to New York Climate Week with us, the Tie-In Podcast.
We're bringing you 2 exclusive interviews in 1 week just to celebrate the occasion. Climate influencer Andrea Learned and singer, songwriter, entertainer, producer, and entrepreneur A.Y. Young.
There is a lot happening in sustainability and entertainment, and we're a direct route to the people doing amazing work behind the scenes.
And I'll be at Climate Week, so get in touch with me through the website, tieinpodcast.com, or you can also reach me through my socials under Mark Rabin. And so we hope you listen in. We've got great stories to bring you.
Today, we have a bit of a different conversation. We're talking about climate influence with Andrea Learned, who calls herself a climate influencer and who advises leaders to build their digital platforms and amplify their voices around climate change and actions they can take personally.
Yeah, and this is a communication space we all need to step into and really understand. And she's helping folks do it and also to be proud of their influence. And I'm really curious as to how that's playing out and how she sees the value and the power there, and also that ripple effect that we're going to see. She seems to take complex ideas and distill them into key digestible messages, which I think is critical for the movement here. So looking forward to learning a lot and tapping into that different side of our brains today.
Let's dive in.
We're here with Andrea Learned, and we're just ahead of the New York Climate Week, and we're looking forward to speaking with you. Andrea, you're a climate influencer, advisor, and also host of the Living Change podcast. So thank you for joining us on the tie-in, and we're super excited to speak with you.
Yes, thank you. I am really excited to talk with you because I really feel like the entertainment industry, culture and entertainment is a huge part of this. There's a lot of climate influence that can be had. I don't think it's been given enough attention from the corporate world. And so I think there's this intersection that I'm really excited to talk with you about. And I am really looking forward to Climate Week in New York City in a week and a half or whatever. I think it will be really fun. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. I love this term climate influencer. I admit I don't quite know what it is. It's kind of new for me. Can you start us off and break it down? What is climate influencer? Did you coin that, or where did you hear that? Help us understand.
Honey, I coined it.
Woo!
Yeah.
I just kept going, what do I do? What is this thing that I do? Because I've been saying strategic communications or leadership platform development, gobbledygook, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the point is that I am looking at all things, right? I'm connecting the dots between this. I'm kind of in a way media. I advise. And so I say also that I'm a climate influence advisor, but I first start out by saying I'm a climate influencer. And now kind of in our conversation, I am now starting to say that I produce climate influence.
Nice.
Because I'm looking for it. I talk about spying it. I spy climate influence. I'm looking for this in a very particular way, and we can get into the details on my particular targets. And then when I find people that have what it takes that I think they're ready for it, I build them. And then the other thing is I've got my platforms, my podcast, my Substack, now working on this documentary film where I'm going to amplify them, because my whole thing, you guys, is a social experiment. I want to find, even if they're just unicorns, right? I want to find a couple more people who maybe haven't been out about their climate values. And I want them to get prouder of the little things they do in their personal life and how that actually connects and intersects with what they're doing professionally. And I want them to be louder about the little pieces of the things that they're doing in their personal life, because that builds trust for all the stuff that they're doing in their professional life. And so I produce climate influence. I find it, I build it, I amplify it.
And is that on like every platform? And you mentioned a couple of avenues, social media, you're doing documentary, all that. So is that through all channels? Like, how do you amplify it? What's that? What does that look like?
Yeah, thank you for asking. It's really because I focus on leader to leader, right? So I
Okay.
am not looking on the consumer. I'm not looking for a bazillion followers on Instagram per se or all of that. So the channels I am on started my connection and my building of a following started in 2008 on Twitter. And so we all know where that kind of is now, but I
Mhm.
built a lot of visibility there. And for a long time, that was a really good B2B or leader to leader, also involving media, climate media journalists. That was the platform to be on. And you guys will notice at Climate Week or COP, as these events happen, there still isn't a good platform where people are really kind of reporting from on the ground, and using Twitter and hashtags on Twitter X is still the way to be going, hey, I'm here. Are you here? You know, this whole thing. So I really started on Twitter. What I say now is I'm on the B2B or the leadership platforms, which would be still for some of us, Twitter/X, LinkedIn. And I'm just now starting to get more on Instagram because I want to figure out how to leverage that in a way to direct more people to more substantial conversations. So I'm newer to Instagram, but I am planning on using those. So I would say those three. And I am
Mhm.
very intentional about not getting on every platform known to man, or because I just
Yeah.
can't do it. I am a one-woman show.
Yeah. Yeah. And well connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
And what were they? I mean, what sort of led you to this moment? You were, were you frustrated about the way that climate was being communicated, or were you, was there a moment there where you were like, we're doing a terrible job and we need to do better, or was it something else that piqued your interest and drove you to that
That is such a
realization?
good that is such a good question, Mark. The thing is that I've been in kind of sustainability communications, corporate stuff for a long time. In 2015, I got more into the climate NGO space during COP21. And what I started to do was I found myself as just sort of a consulting communication strategist. I'd say, no one knows you're out there, right? Your leadership needs to be more visible. And it isn't your NGO going, look at our report, look at
Yeah.
it's like, what is this thing? And the only person who can really talk about that is your CEO or your executive director. I was frustrated, really frustrated over many years by watching corporate communications and NGO and nonprofit communications being so dang scripted.
Yeah.
And like, this is
Or
how
too
we do
technical or not simple enough to
it.
digest for normal people.
Yeah. And also not like it was a thing that people like, we need our leader to do whatever. And he's gonna pen a white paper and won't it be great? It is boring, yawn, boring. And the thing is, from a communication standpoint, people build trust with human beings. You got the org saying we're doing this and isn't this great, but how do I, who, right? I want to know, you know, Stephanie Smith, who's the executive director of it. Like, I want to know more about her as a person. I build trust with her as a person. Then I might take a little look at what the NGO or the nonprofit is doing. So that's really where this came up with. I've been really frustrated that people aren't leveraging leadership voices and the authenticity, the human being that the leader is, into and intersecting with what the brand of the organization is doing.
I feel like there's an apprehension there. I've been kind of coming up against this. Novice in this space, in terms of like, people spend, careers in communication, and I kind of coming at it from like just learning on the fly. But like when I come up against this kind of barrier or apprehension, I'm always wondering why. What is it that is holding you back from speaking about a thing, or your a great thing you might have done, from my perspective, on production? Like, what is holding you back, and why does it take so long? And I'm just curious because I do not have a window behind, that corporate structure. So what have you learned about that?
So the difference, as we know, between a public and a private company, right? The public company's got all this legal stuff and they've got a PR team that's just freaking out, trying to control the whole thing because the legal team will get on them if they do it wrong, whatever. So they have, in my mind, constricted it down to the most milk toast stuff they can share. And then the deal is that's what every other company is doing too, because they've got their legal department and their PR department going, ooh, we got to just say this. This is how we do it. So it comes out of that. But if you look at the emergency, right, the situation we're in now, give me a break, right? If you are a climate value compelled leader, you need to have a little talk with your legal department and your PR team and go, you know what? We need to expand this a little bit. I want to be more authentic through my own platforms, through my LinkedIn channel. And then I can say, go check out my organization's post or whatever. But I want the access to be as much kind of a visible human being as I can, as I can comfortably do and authentically do. And I can't be constricted by this scripting. So it is, I think it's a leftover thing from the past that we have not broken through. And that is part of my huge mission. And as I mentioned earlier, it's unicorn stuff, right? People are like, even I am identifying corporate CEOs who are plant-based or vegan, they are not talking about it. And if they did, the climate values of the product they're making, right, or the claims they're making on COP or Climate Week stages or Davos, have less weight than they could.
You could, you were referencing large corporations, for example. However, there are large entertainment corporations as well. And this is the same issue that we keep coming up against. I mean, they're essentially, talking head politician style leaders versus sticking their neck out and really going to it. And Zena and I always talk about this. You may have heard about it on our podcast, but if there's one industry that can go completely pollution free, decarbonized, net zero, whatever we're going to call it, it's film and entertainment. Yet it's still not quite there. And so can you expand your insight into that corporateness and how we could leverage that for the film and entertainment industry?
Yeah, well, the thing about my work is that I'm identifying unicorns as a way to go, look, that person came out of the closet, if you will, on this topic. So I think one of the things in the entertainment industry is it's like you can see some of the big celebrities, right? Or the big movie stars or TV stars, they use their platforms really well and it's working for them, right? And it's getting them more visibility in the climate space, and they're being invited to be on these stages. And what is the problem? This is an opportunity for leaders that, have the purse strings in the entertainment industry. The first couple of people that stand out big on that are going to, and the more you stand out on climate and are visible on that, that is a branding thing. And people are going to, your listeners and watchers are going to flock to that. So I believe that the way to get through this is exactly the work that I do, which is you identify one of these people who's kind of slowly coming out of this closet or emerging and saying, yeah, I'm really concerned about climate. This is how I'm kind of incorporating it. This is how I'm, getting involved with projects myself. And, and part of that is you reflect that you're plant-based, or you reflect that you ride an e-bike around the studio a lot, or, like you figure out ways to subtly demonstrate that these are your values. And then you take one step out a little bit further than your peers do, and you will win the prize. And this is what I tell the corporate leaders, and this is what is huge for the entertainment industry. And you can look at the celebrities who have come out. I'll give you two examples. One is that my two areas of big interest are less car transportation, bikes for climate. I coined the bikes for climate, number 4, climate tag, and then plant-based for climate. If you remember years ago, LeBron James, Lakers, wanted really badly to ride his bike to practice in LA, right? And he was just, right? And I think he tried it once and he was like, right? So he became really an advocate for, I sure would like to do that. And I think there was another time that Venus or Serena Williams wanted to ride her bike in Miami to wherever she was playing. And it was the hugest press story known to man. She can't do it very often for a variety of reasons, but these little moments are huge. They get a lot of love and you can leverage the heck out of that. And so that's the kind of thing where if a decision maker in the entertainment industry really went out and was a little bit more bold about it, and even to the degree that you pull in a production team, right? You tell the world why you did that, right? And you say, the reason this is important to me to be doing this film and working with this sustainable production outfit or whatever is because it is core to my heart and I am living these values in my family, and this is important to me, and take that risk because it will pay off.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I've been teaching a lot of climate and sustainable production classes over the years. And one of the things that I like to bring up is that most of this is psychological. Like 80% of this is psychological and 20% is like everything else. Everybody tries to, grab that example if we don't have enough, equipment or whatever their thing is, to make that the central issue. But what I keep trying to remind people and getting them past this kind of mental barrier is that a lot of this is psychological and we stand in our own way.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard because I have felt it personally, where it's like, I mean, everybody has a feeling, right? Of, what if like this kind of, and then that's where the apprehension comes in. What do you think is going to be enough social norms, enough sort of normalizing in society, enough whatever to get leaders to the point of being completely authentic and not having that kind of like pull of like, nope, you got to hold back here. What do you think that is going to take?
I think it very much is psychological. And I think it is, you identify, say you want this particular, you would really dream of this particular person in the industry getting more on top of this. You identify who in that person's circle, really influences them, or they are aspirational to be like, or they aspire to be like. You make sure that kind of in that community, you find somebody who is going to be talking about their climate values and whatever, so that that person is just sort of surrounded by that person, or seeing social media coverage of how great that person is, or media coverage. It's in a way, it's vanity, right? So from a psychology perspective, it's vanity. And we can play off that a lot. You can figure out how to make, well, it sure does look like everyone else in the industry is doing this, right? Social norm takes like two other people doing it. And you could say, well, these two guys are doing it. I think it's the trend. And then everyone's going to jump.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say is that my deep background in work is that I was a marketing to women consultant advisor, and I wrote a book called Don't Think Pink on it. And there is a lot of gender stuff. And I will say that women, if there are women leaders in this industry, they are going to be the ones who will step out first and be authentic, and they will take the cake. So we're recording this the day after the presidential debate.
Yeah.
And if you look at the kind of the braveness and the boldness and the ability to like disregard the negative and all the stuff that's coming from the other side, that's a skill that comes from, women having to deal with a lot of crap over the years and just figuring out how to do that. And also they're recognizing that this is a thing that we can motivate other people to do. So we build community and we use joy.
Yes.
Right. And on that point, I tend to talk a lot on podcast interviews because I can just go off on a stream. But I wanted to say that one of the key elements of the work that I do is I focus on name and fame versus name and shame. So if you look at,
repeat that again, repeat that again.
Name and fame, right? Think about being famous. Name and fame versus name and shame. And the deal is that you come out with that. You don't wait for the person to do something amazing. You happen to see that that person was standing at outside a plant-based restaurant once, and you go, cool to see whoever in the industry standing in front of that great plant-based restaurant. That really aligns with climate values. You give them love in advance. You start to build this warm foundation, this grid of love, and people are going to be like, I want more of that. And I think that women get that more and more quickly. And the more women get a little famous with that, the guys are going to be like, I want a little bit more attention. And it seems to be, right, like the studio heads or whatever, or whoever, right? I'm not as in the industry as you guys are, so I don't know all the titles, but the decision makers want to be seen in that light. And there's a way to make them want to be seen in that light. And that's the work that I do.
Well, so interestingly enough, there are multiple levels of decision makers in film. And some protectionist more around their little piece of the pie, and some obviously higher up at the studio executive level. However, a lot of those voices are on sets or on behind the scenes. And that was part of the incentive, for us to look at this, explore these, is a lot of those real leaders that are the actual decision makers that are implementing these new sustainable practices or new technologies are actually just behind the scenes, caught behind the production veil. And so part of this was to amplify those voices. And understanding that, however, the decision makers also at the top, it's so important that we get them to make the right decisions to move this industry forward. Zena and I have been at this almost no, well, Zena's 10 years. I mean, we were working together since 2016, and we're having this same conversations that we had 8, 10 years ago. Behind closed doors, people say, yes, we want this, we want this, we want this. And then when it comes out to the surface, the film industry could have said 5 years ago, we're going to be completely pollution free. We're going to completely decarbonize by this date, non-negotiable, right? Everybody would have grumbled a little bit. Fine. But, we've had initiatives, Zena's had initiative that literally had 100 producers sign up and say, we're going to rent electric vehicles if you get them. And then they were like, okay. Right. The car rental industry was like, yeah, sounds good. Right. So this is such a fertile industry to do this. Like smelting ore and construction and so on, that's going to take a little longer. So what we're trying to figure out, and what we're looking at your influence or climate influencing strategies, right? It's like we've got to move this thing forward faster, and entertainment can be that platform. Sorry, I got a little bit excited there, but that's what we want to. That's what we need to drill into and understand and get this moving up.
Yeah. And at every level, if the director or the producer, again, whoever is at the level, who's behind the scenes doing stuff, the ones that you see that have been bold on various film crews or sets or whatever over time, part of the thing is what you're doing, right? You're pulling them into the podcast, name and fame people that are doing these little things and starting to go, you know what? I'm going to see if I can insist on EVs. Wow, what a win. That's huge. The next person on the next thing who hears about that is going to be like, well, shoot, if she was able to like push for EVs, I'm going to try it too and go. Again, it's a mapping. So the thing in my world is it's always like, but does it scale? Does it scale? Does it scale? This is a totally different thing, which is a step back, map it. Who influences that person to try something new? If this person sees Susie over on that film set do that and succeed, this person's going to go for it. So you just have to be a little bit, and to your point, the psychology, Zena, you just have to be a little bit more like, and dig in and do that. And to what I've been saying, we don't need a bazillion people. We need to start to see a couple people bubble up. We elevate them more. Everyone else goes, oh, it's possible. I'm going to force the issue a little bit more. That's how you build momentum. And we tell the stories, even if somebody tried to do something a little bit bigger and they could only do something kind of medium, we still name and fame that person because we want them to keep trying further and further with every shoot. So it's this very onesie twosie. It seems slow, but then also to your point, the film industry could do this. It would be very visible, the media coverage. So the other part of who I connect with is climate media. Broadly, right? They're talking about agriculture, they're talking about renewable energy, but we can connect the dots and make kind of the stories that are being told or the EV use or the renewable energy use, we can make that an interesting story that appeals to mainstream press. And then we leverage the cultural buzz, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of little things to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like we've been pushing at kind of at the edge of our bubble, if you will, our comfort zone for a little while now. I'm very encouraged about all of the talk and even demonstrating and new tests, if you will, about climate storytelling on that side of it. It's very encouraging in that space. We've kind of been, poking at like, well, if I do it, what's going to happen? Like we've been, and I think from what I'm hearing you say is that we've kind of now normalized enough to where that one or two, are going to feel comfortable enough to say the thing or, be more authentic or whatever. Do you feel like we're kind of at a bit of a tipping point here?
Yeah, well, I think part of it is you are seeing in many sectors that suddenly thus and so person is getting a little bit more publicity if you're monitoring the news or whatever. So yes, I do think we're more at this level, and the Hollywood situation, the entertainment situation, there is so much kind of underground or slightly behind the scenes, or the craftspeople, right, getting together and doing these things. We were talking earlier
Yeah.
about the Hollywood Climate Summit, right? Like people that are in the industry going, what, heck, this is the time to do it. We're going to go for it. So your industry is getting a lot of love for connecting those dots. The visibility, because the craftspeople behind this know, right, how to tell a story and how to produce an event that gets eyeballs on it, right, and gets sponsors. That builds it up, and then that starts to have this sort of cross sector kind of, effect. I think the entertainment industry is right there. And I think that all this news about shaping storylines, et cetera, also
Yes.
really helps corporate leaders realize that their communications suck
Yes.
and they can learn from the real storytellers, right? So I literally, I love the idea, and I've been seeing bits of it, of the entertainment industry as storytellers, just getting more corporate people in, and then that sort of helps them be better connected, so that if there are corporate connections that the entertainment industry needs to sponsor this or for whatever reason, there's this love fest already going on about raising the bar in climate action.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing it, this idea of story, right? I mean, people have been talking about it in lots of different industries and lots of different ways for a long time. And what I'm noticing is that there's there's more awareness. Like, yeah, we need to harness our story. Um, and I feel pretty excited about that. And I see it across the board, not just with like film and TV shows, but also short form as well, like advertising and whatnot. When you're advertising, you're at the end of the, pipeline, if you will. You're now sharing your product with the world. Why not, tell that story or incorporate it into that process? Like we're even in that space, we're getting to like brands starting to think about this and whatnot. So it kind of spans the gamut of different forms of media, if you will, talking about or climate change or their pieces. So I'm
Well,
pretty stoked about that piece.
yeah, and to your point, the idea of, is it a climate storyline? Maybe it's a climate storyline that you know of, but the industry and the craftspeople know that the storyline is about how the character decided to drive an EV, right? Like it's a particular sector and a particular decision that a
Yeah.
person or a character is making that happens to be a climate storytelling overall kind of storyline. But I think the thing that we've discovered in journalism about climate, and that the corporate world is seeing, is that you can't sell anything because you're like, we're doing stuff on climate, right? You need to be
You
really
don't say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and this is the thing that the entertainment industry has, because they've got the food that's being eaten and the cars that are being driven and the all the and the political decisions, like they've got all these pieces that they can be telling these stories. And this is why, if there are big films or productions that come out that are supposedly about climate and it's a big deal, I think that pushes a lot of people away. But if you get these subtle little, oh, there was a lot of solar panels in that TV
Yeah.
show, right? There was a lot of that. Goes back to, I believe there's some sort of rule in advertising that if you see a message 7 times in a variety of ways, the message will get through. And so storytelling, right? Films, TV, this whole thing has so much potential to like drop these little hints, like, most people now live and they are more likely to eat plant-based, they're more likely to drive an EV, they're more likely to have a solar panel. Like, make that so, right? Just make that so.
And if you don't, you're doing a disservice to basically our society, because like we have held this now back and we haven't normalized it. And then, climate change is upon us, right? So it almost feels like you can't not in some way.
Right.
Yeah. And I think the science is there, everything is there. And it's just like, the line, if you've said the line is clear that if you aren't acting on this and kind of jumping in and being more enthusiastic about what you're doing, you're going to look irrelevant like tomorrow, right? And things like Climate Week come up, and anybody who's not like involved with the Hollywood Climate Summit event or, you know, the media and the storytelling stuff is going to look like an idiot. And so any brand that's sponsoring that or getting involved with that or studio or whatever is really, really smart. But, right, the final piece is that we need to see individuals that represent those studios stepping out and talking more about this is why our studio decided to da, 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 da. And then you see that person living a little bit more of a climate valued life, and you're like, okay, I trust you.
But
Huge opportunity.
Andrea, though, in both, you know, Zena too, it's like I still think we're not clear and cohesive on our messaging. You're very good at not taglines, but you know, like really clear, like name and fame, right? I've heard you say climate influence, so I can see your thought process in really bite-sized, you know, little snippets, so that we can start to advance some of these ideas that are clearly very complex underneath, but you know, at the top. And I think, you know, just to say, oh, we wrote a white paper, or you've got again leaders that are coming out and saying, oh, we're doing all these things and very technical, but that's not exciting. That's not reaching people. It's not telling the message. And I think, like, I look across the whole entire climate, I don't know, climate industry, I guess, or climate folks that are influencing and so on. Like, everybody's got a different message. Everybody's some various degrees of technical, you know, like the climate scientists, for example, come up with their thing, but that has no bearing on almost anything that we're all doing. Yeah, do you have any ideas around that? How we could communicate and bring this together? Like, what strategy should we be using to get a much clearer message? You know, Zena and I can then bring to, or everybody who's listening, right? Because that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we have today. It's the messaging is not clear. It can be overly complex, even scientific. And so what we're trying to figure out is, you know, what does that next step look like, and our next steps?
Yeah, I think that it boils down to like the old cliche that it needs to be humanized. And you need to be, like I say, this is why you need a leader talking about it as a human. And you need to, the science is always going to be there and backing things up. But people, both your peers and your viewers, right? The people that are involved, the consumers of your product they are looking for like, how does this relate to me? To your point, right? So all the technical details, it's just like, those baseline things that a lot of organizations talk about. So if it's an organization that's doing a lot of consumer behavior change, they're not going to say all the specifics about emissions and whatever, but they're literally going to say, if you did this one thing, like tackled your food waste, the emission saved would be the equivalent of blah, right? And that means this, like those 3 points. Anybody who's working on this level or is on this journey, I like the idea of talking about the journey too, because it doesn't make it seem like you better be over here all the way here or you're in trouble. What I've seen from the journey, even the journey of getting braver to be seen for climate influence, is that they do a baby step and you go, good job, right? Like you posted about that, good job. Like every little step in the journey, you really, really celebrate them. Another thing that I've said is you love them up.
Yeah.
So these are things that I all started from my Twitter leadership kind of work and analyzing it isn't this data and numbers and whatever, right? That really helps make decisions. But if you look at a thing, you listen, don't say a word, right? You learn. The third thing you do is you love up before anyone's asked you to love them up, right? So you say,
love up. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and this would be an example for like, well, we really want to get known for our blah, blah. And how are we going to shape a story for the media and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, no. Who else in your world is kind of doing that? Start being the one who goes, good job, so-and-so for doing that. Good job. Great article, so-and-so for writing about the connection between blah, blah, blah. You reach out with your love and it will immediately come back because so few people are reaching out with love in advance before anyone's asking them to. This is the key, and this is the thing that you can do with social media. It's just these little things like, good job, I love how you're connecting the dots between blah, blah, blah. Drop it. You're not writing a story. You don't have to become their best friends. But here's the thing that I know about the relationships I've built with climate media. I'm enthusiastically saying, great article, whoever. I love how you connected the dots between this and that. And I will just repeatedly do that over a course of months. guess what? They're going to reply when I message them about some idea I have, right? So it's a foundation of love, naming and faming before anyone asks for it, no structure involved,
Yeah.
right?
No
I
ulterior
love,
motive.
yes, no ulterior motive. I love that term.
Yeah.
Just there's no ulterior motive. It's just like, well, and this is the thing you and anybody who's interviewed me gets is I have this enthusiasm, right? And literally, I have friends who recently bought e-bikes, and I've been sort of nudging them for a while and whatever, and they finally did, and we all rode to an amazing concert on the waterfront in Seattle last weekend. And they rode the bike all the way down, and it was a pretty significant mileage for people. People aren't used to that. They got home. I had texted them like, great flipping job. I can't believe you did that. The next day they were like, Andrea, we would never have done this without you. They didn't say, did we do a good job? I'm just going, good job. Your enthusiasm. I think we all feel it, you guys. If you're reading something about a CEO or something that happened in your industry and you're just like, oh, sweet, so-and-so did whatever, take that to the bank, man. Go on Instagram and say, cool article about whatchamajiggy and blah, blah, right? That it's this human enthusiasm. And so what we're all getting at here is human beings and enthusiasm and that cliched now word authenticity, but it matters. And I am authentically this enthusiastic and crazy, right? Whatever your level of that is, you can express that on Instagram and you guys can really dial in and say, right? We're going to dial in on this particular producer or this particular studio or whatever, and we're going to start loving up for any little thing they do. And off we go.
Yeah. Yeah, I often feel like the thing that holds people back from doing that is the fear of being wrong or being like called out in some way or whatever. And I'm kind of to the point, like, like we cannot wait. Like, why not love up someone? Why not be positive, right? Like it's kind of like I have spent years working on that on myself on that, right? And I'm kind of like, why not? Why am I afraid? Like I have a kid and I cannot see a positive future if like if if I don't do something that keeps me hopeful and optimistic, right, for him. And then he sees that I'm working on it and like he's more positive. Like it's a whole thing. And then we're talking about like just like you said, something simple like loving up or people on social media. Like how hard is that?
Yes. And this is a societal or cultural thing where we're all buttoned up and we're worried about this, that, and the other thing, and more and more. And I feel like a lot of times people don't get to this till they're like in their middle age and they realize they want to have a more authentic vibe in the world, right? And they study up on it and you're like, oh, part of what I do and what I'm suggesting is by doing this and demonstrating this, you are giving permission to the next person to do it.
Yeah.
And you don't give permission by saying, I give you permission, right? You give permission by saying, wow, that was so cool, whatever. And whoever's watching that goes, that was super cool. I'm going to try that next time.
Yeah.
You have to walk the talk, pedal the talk, right? It's the same stuff. But you have to do it louder and more visibly. And that is key for me. You can be doing this.
Yeah.
But if you're choosing not to be visible doing it, you are leaving a whole lot of climate influence on the table. And my ask is for if you are eating a plant-based diet, riding an e-cargo bike to take your kids to school, whatever, just be a wee bit more visible with it. It will change the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you've mentioned it a couple of times. The areas of focus that you're really passionate about. What are they? I feel like biking, plant-based food, like tell us about that. What are you passionate about?
So it just turns out that the things that bubble up in me, because I started riding a bike for transportation in Portland, Oregon in the 90s, like Portlandia, right? Because a friend said, why aren't you biking? It's 4 miles. What's the big deal, right? So I'm paying attention to influence in my life, right? But it was biking for me. And then again, one of my podcast episodes is about, a DJ at KXP who, knowing him and being in marketing committee meetings, he influenced me. But what I then saw in my climate work is, and I can't remember when the big IPCC report came out, I don't know, now it might have been 7 years. And the top 4 sectors that they said needed to be acted on, if we did that, it would be a chunk of emissions very quickly. And I noted, I think the 4 were something like buildings, efficiency, energy, food, and transportation.
Yes.
And I was like, hello. food and transportation comes authentically out of me. And so that's why I just focused in on it. And aside to that, which you see develop in my podcast and which will continue to be, because I talk with mayors, like a former mayor of Culver City, and it's housing, right? It's cities for climate. So if you look at this UN Sustainable Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goal SDG 11 is something like sustainable communities. And if you look at that, I can include transportation, food, and just cities broadly. And so I often say that I sort of lean on SDG 11, but if you go to IPCC, food and transportation are huge. That's really stuff that you can reflect in film and TV, right?
Big time.
And huge emissions by changing food policy or, scope 3 emissions in corporate sustainability reporting, blah, 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 in either of those ways. And people say, well, it won't matter if we do incentives to get our employees or whatever to ride bikes for local transportation. We have to do these EV fleets and it has to be a big flipping deal. Why not do both? Why not do the e-bike incentive? And then, by the way, we're also doing the EV fleets. It all connects. And oh, by the way, our CEO or our studio head, here's him riding his bike in his local wherever, right? All of it matters because we're telling a story, right? So I'm producing climate influence.
Yeah.
These little pieces are all together telling a story so that you don't have to put a press release out, right? You just do these little things along the way and it weaves and becomes this whole story.
Yeah. I
I
love
feel
it.
very kindred to you on this. I think this is a lot of the stuff that Zena and I talk about and trying, learning how to do. Because I think that's the other thing too. You don't just wake up one day and start doing this. I mean, it's a culmination of a lot of the different people and conversations we've had on that front. And so, having said that, one of our things that we do in our podcast is we're also looking to create a new playbook or like guiding principles around sustainability entertainment. And just curious as to what you would think are the first 1 to 3 things that come to mind that we should include in this playbook with these sort of certain guiding principles.
Well, I'm going to use my overriding one, which is if you're doing these things in your playbook, the last thing should be do not forget to flip and talk about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So remember that all of these 8 things or whatever that are in your playbook are the story, right, that you're telling. Do not forget to tell the story or give yourself permission to tell the story in much more fun, authentic, name and fame ways that lift the whole industry because you will look like a rock star, but you're also lifting the industry. There is no downside to the stuff that we've been talking about today. So I would say the storytelling. I don't know how else your playbook looks, but it's just like, I'm working with New York City on their plant-powered carbon challenge. We're trying to get organizations, corporations, sports venues and stuff to sign up, right? To go more plant forward in their food service. And that whole idea is just, it's the simple things and it's the basic things. It's scope 3 emissions. There's so much this, what is the story you want to tell about food? There are some really interesting ways to transform sets. My guess is that a lot of the talent are interested in more plant forward food. And I think there are a lot of stories. So for example, I'm getting off the playbook thing. So I'll just stop here.
It's perfect.
Okay.
That's great.
It's just a prompt.
Yeah.
So you knew that my playbook set was going to go right to the transportation and the food.
I want it to.
Right.
I want to hear more about that.
The food is really interesting because you do it, you get kind of more plant-based food. I think Hollywood Climate Summit has been making a real effort and being very noisy about, we have all plant-powered. And I'm just like, hallelujah, literally, like, why on earth isn't the entirety of Climate Week saying there's no animal agriculture here, right? Like this is all.
Yeah.
So food in every little way, right? If you've got it at the, whatever you call it in Hollywood, right? Like the food trucks, the whatever, you've got it in all those places. Why not do a little video after each production that's just like, how, what was your response to the food, whatever, and you talk to a movie star and you talk to a production person and you talk to whatever, you make it a whole community. I think one of the things that I've enjoyed as far as getting to know a little bit the people at the Hollywood Climate Summit in the last couple of years and understanding this more, I'm a total outsider. I hadn't been paying attention really before I met a couple of people that way, is the love and the community of the whole thing. And when it's a production and you're on the set and whatever, there's a famous actor, but there's also a person that is the, all the various jobs that are involved. You just learn, and you're a family for however many weeks, right? The shoot is. There is something so heartwarming about that and so relatable. And talking about how fun it was to discover there was better plant-based food, or to be able to ride e-bikes around set, or those two things that are so important to me. And then how that you could potentially like talk about the data, that how that spreads out. If we did this kind of food and this sort of, local transportation for this many sets over this much time, boom, like little videos that tell the story more of like the actual production, include that in some way that you're promoting the film. So again, it's like all these aspects of storytelling. My sector's food and transportation. I think there's a lot of stories, even EV fleets, right? Even like there's some super fun stuff to do there. And you should be proud that you did it, because you're going to talk to people that are like, this is incredible. I had no idea I could request, or that it would be possible for us to get so much plant-based food from a food truck, or for me to be, and a lot of times what you're doing is helping people try the plant-based food and helping them try the e-cargo bike. And then they're going to go buy one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's on your job site, right? You've been introduced to it in a different way, and it influences you, beyond just that job site. It's the ripple effect.
And
right?
it's in your daily life. So I think a lot of times with like, oh, I tried that new vegan restaurant. It's like this one thing, right? It's like, how do you integrate it? And so when I talk about bikes, I'm really, really talking about bikes as transportation.
Yeah.
Not like going to the beach, that whatever. Anyone's going to do that and say that e-bike was fun. You need to help them take it and go, oh, I can ride it to the coffee shop that's 2 miles away from me. I didn't realize that until I was on this set, right?
Yeah.
And I use this e-cargo bike.
Yeah. Yeah. And this, goes back to that psychological element of like, and even just flipping, like we're creative people, right? Like we wouldn't be in this industry if there wasn't some element of creativity. Even, it's like creative in how you're going to power the set, because you've now got to figure out all these tools, and there's some problem solving creative element to that, all the way to the creative of like coming up with the project itself, right? Like writers and all of that. So like every element is creative, and I think what we're missing is just actually realizing that, right?
Yeah.
Just, and realizing that and stepping into that power.
You nailed it.
Thank you. I mean, I feel, you're the expert. Yay. I've learned something, like, and stepping into that. But it's just so like, oh my gosh. Yes, of course. And this idea, it came to me, I don't know, a couple of years ago through an organization, a Better Food Foundation, Default Veg. I don't know if, you know them. Okay. Like, of course. Oh my gosh, flip it around and it's default.
Well, interestingly, Better Food Foundation is the organization that we're working with on that New York City plant-powered carbon challenge. Like, they are the implementers. They're incredible. The thing that we're talking about, to your point, is joy, right? You embrace your joy. You discover a thing. You're like, oh, right? We have been like, oh, can't be too enthusiastic. Can't be too joyful. If we empower, to your point, and just show and reflect that joy is the new whatever high, I don't know, right? Like, insert a little joy into all of this. The vibes, the passing along of the ideas, the creative juice just flows, and it transforms everything. And I think we've been lacking that, and we have to step into it. Just like you said, that's the thing.
I've got a lot of ideas that are just flooding into my mind right now, but I know we've been talking. Like we gotta, I'm in the Seattle area too. I'm gonna come see you, and
I'm not far.
Mark's not far either. Like we should really like hang out.
I think we should meet up at John Richards Bar, Life on Mars on Capitol Hill. And that's the first episode of my podcast, Living Change, is an interview with him live there. Really, really interesting and really fun. And it was during COVID. So it was a big, wow, I get to talk to somebody in person. And anyway, that bar is really cool. And I think that, helping all of us and the people that listen to you in their cities, like, get excited about this and go meet up at their vegan restaurant or their bar and get excited about this and jazz each other up is like huge. That's part of the story.
Yeah. And it's just fun. I mean, why not have some fun, right? And enjoy. Like that has just been thrust into the American psyche recently. And I'm just loving it, honestly. Like just to kind of let loose a little bit and kind of, brush off some of that weight or whatever we had and just like, breathe and be joyful.
It goes back to kind of what we had said at the beginning when we were talking about how organizations communicate this stuff in a very structured, scripted way. They're afraid that legal's going to do this or that or the other thing. The music kind of my music enthusiasm, of course, has built because I've been involved as a volunteer and kind of working with KXP for fun stuff. And one of the bands that I heard through them is a band named Idols, IDLES, and they're from Bristol, UK. And one of their albums, and this is the first album when they came through Seattle and I got to see them there, is entitled, wait for it, Joy as an Act of Resistance. That's my tag now, everybody. And think about it, right? So if you're thinking about all these umbrellas and these terms that I've shared, right? If you just at the tippy top, it's joy as an act of resistance. And then the next thing is climate influence. And then the next thing is name and shame or love up, right? Like, why the heck not? We don't have, the time is of the essence, and we are all human beings who want to connect with one another. There you go.
Well said. Nice, like boom, summary. Just bring it home.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Yay. You're welcome. This has been a pleasure. I love to talk about this stuff. Joy the kind of realization of joy has changed my life through music, through connections, like getting more involved with the entertainment and cultural worlds has been really, I've been waiting for it, I think, right? Which is why my heading more into my podcasting work and developing documentary films and stuff it just makes so much sense. But I have been waiting to give myself permission to do it. And I was like, I'm really excited and enthusiastic when I'm around these people, right? When I'm talking about these things. Why the heck is that not really my space? Now, for me to be able to leverage that with the corporate sustainability and the kind of yawn NGO climate communications world, that's the bridge that I want to build with the entertainment and culture. Like, I know that space. I know those people. I know what they're resisting. I kind of know how to get them involved. That's what I want to do.
Love it. And I think there's an element that comes up quite a bit around play. So you've got joy and then you've got play. And, we're kind of play is beat out of us at an early age. But I think that's a big part of it as well, is to getting back to that play, that lighthearted laughing. And, it doesn't have to be anything particular, but it just has to be play. And then from joy and, nothing's more joyful than hearing children running and playing and, cheering and so on. Right. So
we have to get back to that. And playing is, the creativity, right? It goes back to the big picture of what the work that you guys do and sort of what we're talking about with storytelling and, why people get into the entertainment industry in the first place. And, how do we let all of this stuff constrict our joy and constrict our whatever, because we're on, we've got a time thing or we've got a whatever. Stop it. Stop it. Step back and go, oh, this was the funnest shoot I ever did, or this was the funnest, and be enthusiastic and talk about it. And then everyone else will have permission to do the same. And the world will change, and the climate influence. There's a reason that I focus mainly on this leader to leader, right? Influencing peers, because they can do this whole thing where if they give permission or they change a policy, it is released for all these people within the organizations who are chomping at the bit to make change. Oh, good. Our boss said it, right? So we are not getting enough of that. The second we start to get a little bit more leadership going, heck yeah, the whole thing will change very quickly.
Amazing. Amazing.
Love it.
Yeah, that is, thank you for inspiring that. Thank you for inspiring the message and for talking to us about it, because this is now given at least me, Mark, we're a new vocabulary to go out and talk to people as we, try to, bring this work forward and the, other work in our day jobs.
And I think we know also to work with you in the near future to come up with, even newer ones that are more targeted to some of the work that we're doing would be really great as well,
Yeah.
because I think you're onto something.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think about it in terms of putting on a climate influence lens, right? And if I'm talking about producing, right, I see the seeds of it. I know who needs to connect the dots. I know if XYZ journalist writes about it at the middle stage, it will help us get to the later stage. It is producing this whole thing. And it's just switching your lens, doing a mind shift change that is super powerful. And even in acting it, you guys, even in doing it, we are then influencing others around. I mean, I go to a regular kind of monthly environmental journalist thing in Seattle, and I feel kind of like a fraud because I didn't go to journalism school, I didn't whatever, but I find that I'm in these gatherings, and often my enthusiasm, right, and my bubbling makes them remember that they love their work and that they can be a little bit more joyful in sharing what they're up to. That's my reward. That's like my greatest reward, is
Yeah.
all of us who are in the sustainability and climate space realizing why we're in it, and there's this joy in remembering to express it.
Love it.
Here, here. Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks, Andrea.
So fun. So I just want to say, if people are interested in my work, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm Andrea_climate influence on Instagram. I'm just getting going, so be gentle with me, but and I share my authentic, like I did double Dutch at this music thing downtown last week, and it's ridiculous, but I put it up there, right? So Andrea_climate influence. I'm still on Twitter at Andrea Learned, and I'm going to hang out there for a while because Climate Week, I'll be tweeting or whatever,
Yes.
right? And same with COP. And so LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter.
What
And
about
then
your podcast?
my podcast is Living Change, A Quest for Climate Leadership. There's a season 1. I'm now in a podcasting fellowship and developing broader ideas, probably adding some commentary, but I'm developing the next season at kind of a bigger scale. And then Substack. So I have been on Substack a little while, and I am trying to do little audio clips because what I've recognized is it's my voice and my enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And so I get on and I'll just be like, okay, everybody, right? I just start talking, and it's trying to keep them at like 10 minutes or less as audio posts to keep enthusing people about this. I'll say one more thing. I just posted something on LinkedIn as an article. I'm starting a thing called I Spy Climate Influence.
Ooh.
And I'm just going to say, I noticed that, thus and so corporate CEO ate at a plant-based restaurant, and I'm, whatever, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
going to raise up demonstrations of what I'm talking about, even if they didn't intend it. I'm going to say I spy climate influence, right? So if you see somebody at Climate Week, well, this is a good
Right.
one for you, Mark. If you
Yeah.
see somebody at Climate Week who's a surprising validator and riding a city bike around town, and take a picture, right? And name and fame them.
Got it. Love it.
And then I'll reshare that with an I Spy Climate Influence, or you use the tag I Spy Climate Influence. And so I'm starting a
Yeah.
series on that. I will probably be talking about that more on Substack and then posting on that on LinkedIn. This is
And
all,
Instagram, probably.
and Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once I figured out, this is all just
Yeah.
to demonstrate the thing, give them the love, and then make all the people who are already biking or eating plant-based or doing whatever realize that they just need to be a little bit louder about it, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll tag them with I Spy Climate Influence.
That's right. Get out there so you can be seen.
Exactly.
So fun.
And then
So
love them
fun.
up.
Love them up.
All right. Wow. I was always just inspiring and amazing. And I just love that we get to speak with incredible climate influencers like Andrea Learned. And
Yeah.
I just, as you probably heard in the interview, I mean, I just really, really buy into the messaging bit, and that we need to really make that messaging more human centric and digestible, and just get out there and love people up.
Love it up. I mean, I love her chunked down like
Yeah.
phrases. I mean, we can all hang on to those kinds of things.
Mhm.
That's not complicated,
And they're
but
repeatable. They're easy.
repeatable. And it's just like, love them up. Like, of course, like foundation of love. I mean, why not? Like this whole, like, I feel lighter after having that conversation
Mhm.
because I feel like she, like I've even been thinking about this for a while, and
Yeah.
like I'm in the space and I'm like, just do it, that kind of thing. but somehow she gave me more permission to be a little more free and light. Like, and I think that came out in the conversation, and I feel it
Yeah.
physically right
Yeah.
now. Like, I feel excited and more joyful, like joy. I mean, honestly, it's come up only recently. Like I
Oh, really?
said, well, just
Depends what circles you're running, I guess.
I guess so, but I just like it's
Been in the
been more
climate discussion.
mainstream as
Yeah.
recently in the American psyche.
Yeah. And
Uh
certainly not in the climate discussion.
Not in the climate discussion, which like why not? And I think she brought it home right there in that conversation. Like, why not? And we can give ourselves permission to talk about this and share a little bit more about what's going on in our own lives
Yeah.
as people.
Yeah. We're just people. We're just people doing things.
Just
So
people.
even the CEO of the biggest corporation, they're just people.
Yeah. Yeah. So super
Well,
fun.
yeah, lots of
Yeah,
tidbits there to take away and digest, and also, I really hope that there are folks listening to this who get something like we did from it, and we can move this throughout the various levels of the film entertainment organization because it's not just limited to the doers on the ground or to the executives at the top.
exactly. Exactly. So listeners, your action is to love up.
Love
Love
up.
up. Find somebody, recognize them, spy it, and say it.
Yeah.
And like if we all do that, we'll just be that much closer to this wonderful world that I think we all want, right? So,
Absolutely.
but
And one footnote here, I will be in New York from September 22nd to the 29th for New York Climate Week.
right.
So if anybody's listening to this and wants to get a hold of me, please do that. You can reach me on all the social medias and emails and even through the tie-in. But I'd love to meet with you if you have something to say, if you want me to interview you on the fly.
Ooh,
Would love that. So I will be around. Reach out to
awesome.
me.
Yeah, do it, everyone. Like Mark's great. Like he's a great conversationalist. So do reach out to him. That would be fun. It would be fun to meet people.
Absolutely.
Cool. All
All right.
right.
Until next time.
Nice. Okay. Bye. Hey, folks. We wanted to make sure you all know about the Sustainable Production Forum coming up in Toronto on September 23rd, in Vancouver on October 8th, and virtually on October 23rd. I will be at all three events.
And Zena and I are doing a live recording of the tie-in in Vancouver on October 8th. And the tie-in is a media partner, so stay tied in with us and remember to subscribe to the podcast.
Yep, go to sustainableproductionforum.com to get all the information and to get your tickets. We'll see you there. Hello, entertainment industry. Something I've been working on over the past year with partners U.S. Green Building Council California and Aerith Environmental is the development of the Sustainable Production for Entertainment Certification, or SPEC, as we like to call it.
It's the first certification for the entertainment workforce, and it's now live for folks to sign up.
Yeah, go to the U.S. Green Building Council California website at usgbc-ca.org to learn more about it and to register for an upcoming class. This is a great way to up your sustainability game and gain a professional certification. So this is for you. See you in class. Our designer is Aaliyah Kane. Music is by Peter Chapman. Our producer is Colin Miller.